witches, demons, ghosts, cosmic abyss creatures. We read some books this past month, let me tell you. So today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in June. A lot of horror and then some sci-fi and fantasy sprinkled in there. First up, we have The Midnight Muse by Joe Kaplan, and this is a Sporror horror. When I say Sporror, I mean like mushrooms. So this is mushroom horror, and it's about this girl who went missing in the woods. She was the lead singer of this metal band. The metal band was called Queen Carrion, and she had gone out to the woods to try and find her muse so she could finish the last song on their album, and she goes missing. And so a year later, the rest of the band goes out there. They stay in this weird, creepy cabin. They all go out there for kind of like different reasons. Basically, like to remember their singer, just talk about possibly moving on. You have the one band member who wants his girlfriend to sing for the band, and he's gonna somehow bring that up. And then you have the other band member who's still looking for the lead singer and has never given up on her and like thinks she might still be out there. And then you have like the dynamics of the other band members. One of them wants to actually go to California and become a studio musician and move on from all of this and all the stuff and drama that has surrounded this band, because there was also, before the singer went missing, they had played at this club, I think it was called like the Wonder Room or something. They were playing this one song and something weird happened where all the lights went out. But when the lights went out, it was like everyone was like nowhere and they were in this like liminal place and like this abyssal thing, and it felt like they were being buried alive. And then when the lights did come back on, everyone like freaked out. There was a bunch of people injured and one person died. So you have like that weird drama. And so throughout the book too, there's all these like different articles and stuff. So you get some insight and backstory into the band. And it's super weird because they go out there and they stay there and then they think they hear the lead singer, Bryn, her voice in the woods at night singing. And also there's like this like trap door that goes down below the cabin into this weird basement. And there's a tunnel down there that goes to God knows where. And also it seems like there used to be this rumored like foundation out there too. This is in like Oregon in the wilderness and whatnot. In this weird place that used to do all this paranormal research. And they come across people wearing gas masks out there as well, and other weird stuff they encounter. And it's a super effed up book, and it's awesome. So after that, I read The Subtle Art of Folding Space by John Chu. And this follows the story of the main character, Ellie. She is kind of like this weird engineer that works on keeping the universe from falling apart. And it seems like there's this cabal of shadowy engineers that want to mess everything up, like mold things for their own evil machinations. And somehow her mother is being kept alive in this weird semi-state by this weird construction that's been added to like the Skunk Works, which is the place that houses all the different things that keep the different universes running and this, that, and the other. And it's super weird, but it was a really enjoyable read. It also has to do with a lot of family drama because her sister is like the worst horrible human being on the planet, and throughout her whole life has been trying to kill her. And so the mother too had been like refused to see how horrible the one sister is, and like the one sister too puts on this face where like she pretends she's the good one, so everyone thinks that like Ellie is the black sheep of the family when she's not. And the only person who really knows this is her cousin, who had lived with them growing up. So we got to actually see how the sister was, who continues to be horrible throughout the whole thing. And Ellie, I think, is a little naive to think that her sister could ever, like, be any different than she is. But, you know, who knows? Who's to say what will happen? It's a short little novella, and it's basically Ellie and her cousin trying to figure out, like, who's trying to do this. Can they stop them? Who can they trust? And then you have the sister trying to kill her throughout all of this, and what are the sister's reasons? And then also you have this like weirdness of her cousin Daniel when he runs diagnostics and stuff, because he works on keeping the universe together too in the Skunk Works. Stuff turns into like food, and if it's weird, like it'll taste weird, but if stuff is right, it'll taste good. And some of the stuff like just doesn't make sense, but in the context of this book it did, and you didn't really need to have like a grasp on quantum mechanics or anything like that. Like it was a really enjoyable read. If any of that sounds good to you, I don't know if I'm explaining it quite well. I really enjoyed my time in the pages, and it's short and sweet and weird. So after that one, I read The Book Witch by Meg Schaefer. I had read another book by her called The Lost Story, which I thought was a fantastic read. This one's even better. This book was so good. Like, one of my favorite reads of the year so far, I would say. So, the Book Witch, she protects works of fiction. There are these other people that are like book burners that try to go into the pages of the story and like kidnap main characters and ruin the books for whatever reasons. And so the book witches go in and protect against this and save the characters and whatnot. So you have throughout this that the book witch will be jumping in and out of different stories. And there's a bunch of rules too, like do not eat food there, do not fall asleep, and under no circumstances ever fall in love with anyone within the pages that is a fictional character. I mean, all these things kind of make sense, right? It's kind of like fairy too. Like, don't eat the food there or you stay forever. Like, if you eat the food and you stay too long in the pages of a book, you may start to forget who you are, why you're there, and then you just stay there forever. You have the person who is the head of the book witches, who's kind of a super stickler for the rules, and she sucks, let's be honest. And then she's always telling the main character, you're never gonna live up to how good of a book witch your mother was, this, that, and the other. And you have that. And then her grandfather, who's also a book witch, he goes missing. And it turns out that his mission wasn't even on the pages. It was like some sort of weird secretive mission. Also, the main character's mother had died when she was really young, so she doesn't have really that many memories of her. And her mom left her this one Nancy Drew book that she holds really dear to her, and that's all she ever got from her mom. And then someone steals that book. And then somehow that might just be connected to what her grandfather's doing. I don't even know. You jump in and out of stories like The Great Gatsby and Alice in Wonderland, and it's so fantastic. It's cozy, it's sweet, it's emotional. I laughed, I cried. It was so effing good. One of my favorite reads of the year. This and The White Octopus Hotel by Alexander Bell have been two of my favorite reads of the year. Not in the horror genre. All right, next up we have The Armageddon Rag by George R.R. Martin. And this is the first book I've ever read by George R.R. Martin. I will probably never read Game of Thrones, but I love the cursed music trope. If you have a story about we sold our souls to rock and roll or whatever, just music in horror, I love it. I thought it was awesome. I feel like this is a book that people who like the Game of Thrones book, if they read this, they'd be like, what the F? Like, it's not even in the same vein or realm of things. I feel like it's that whole kind of thing, like how some people are like, I don't like Stephen King's fantasy because he's a horror writer. And it's like, dude, Stephen King writes all kinds of stuff. He wrote The Green Mile. He wrote The Dark Tower is dark fantasy, and it's one of the best fantasy series I've ever read. But I digress. Anyways, so back to this book, The Armageddon Rag. There was this band called the Nazgul, and tragedy befell them a long time ago. Their lead singer was killed. That broke up the band. You have this music journalist, or he used to be, now he's an author of books and whatnot, and he gets this call from his boss because this rock promoter was killed, and he used to be the manager for the Nazgul, and he also like refused to let go of their contract after the singer died, and he was like, if there are three of you that want to be in a band together, I control everything and this, that, and the other. And so there's like all these people who could have possibly killed this guy. And so, they think maybe, oh, what if it was one of the band members because they held on to this animosity? The guy wouldn't let their contract go, this, that, and the other. As you get into that, it seems that someone else wants to resurrect the Nazgul, get them back together, get them on tour again and playing. But what are they going to do about the lead singer? Like, how do you replace that? Apparently, it's only a formality. You just have to, do some weird machinations and stuff. And there's all this like weird occult stuff going on in the background. It's like a road trip, and it's this journalist who he goes and talks to the band members before they get back together. And they were a band from like the 60s. And so they were kind of like a hippie band, but a lot like on the darker side. There's also like power in music, right? So maybe someone who wants to get this band together wants to use the power of that music to harness it for their own machinations for weird reasons and this, that, and the other. So you have that element to it too. And you also have like the soul searching of like the main character who's the journalist, Sandy, as he's like going back and talking to all his old friends that used to be in the scene and the hippie scene and whatnot, and how they've changed and who they've become and the things they said they'd never become or do and that they end up doing. I really liked it a lot. I thought it was a great book. Like I said, I like that though, that cursed horror trope. A lot of the songs of this band's last album too, it seemed like they were almost like spells, and that they might awaken something bad if those spells were ever to like come to fruition. There's that whole thing, especially when they start performing again and they go back to the beginning of where everything went so wrong. And I know that book's super hit or miss with people, but since I like that genre of horror, it was very easy for me to like. Okay, so after that one, we read a short weird cosmic horror called Abyss by Nicholas Binge. This is the third book I've read by Nicholas Binge. Really like him as an author. He writes super weird, like existential stuff. This one is a pretty much like commentary of how people are just like worked to the bone and productivity. Like, how much can we squeeze out of people? And so this guy gets this job and he goes to this building, and the building is not quite a building. It seems to make you forget who you are and what you're doing and all of this. And at some point, it seems like, well, first of all, there's very few people in the building when he gets there. And then the people he does meet, it starts to seem like maybe they live there and never leave the building. And what in God's name is in the basement? Don't go in there. So the first day he's there, there's no one in the lobby, there's no one anywhere. And then he calls like the guy who hired him and he's like, hey, where do I go? No one's down here. And then the guy he's talking to, he's like, this is ridiculous. And the guy hangs up on him and he's like, okay. So then he gets this call and there's this lady. And she's like, oh, you need to go to the elevator, go to the 4th floor, So he goes to the elevator, can't get to the 4th floor, apparently. And he's supposed to contact a super user to fix this or whatever that is. But then it turns out all these super users' phone numbers are disconnected. No one ever answers. So he gets to the 3rd floor and he doesn't see anyone for a while. Then he finally sees like some big tall dude like hunched over doing something weird. And he like knocks on the door. The guy comes out and he's like, what? And he can't really see behind him like what the guy was doing. But the guy's got like red crap all over his mouth. So that's freaking weird. There's like all these weird red flags happening, but our guy Joe, he just ignores it all. And he's like, yeah, I'm trying to get to the 4th floor. I'm new here. And then the guy like totally changes. He's like, oh, yeah. This building can be kind of confusing. This is where you go to get to the stairs, go up. You should have contacted the super user. Anyway, so he goes and he finally gets to his cubicle and then like stuff gets all weird. And, you know, there's a company AI and the AI wants to be like his best friend, it seems like. And he keeps interrupting the stuff that he's doing. And it is a weird, cosmic, strange book. It's short, it's sweet. I do have a standalone review for that. If you'd like a little more information, I will link that down below in the darkness if you want to check that out. All right, after that one, we read book 6 in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, The Eye of the Bedlam Bride. These books are ginormous at this point in time. I think this was another 800 pager. Holy hell. It was awesome. This might be my favorite one yet. I know a lot of other people's was like The Butcher's Masquerade, but I really love this one. This one almost gives you hope for all the people that are experiencing like all this horribleness. So the Eye of the Bedlam Bride, this whole level of the dungeon, it's like card battles. You have to go and collect for your team like 6 different totems, so you're like main monsters. So you need to find like the best, fiercest, good variety of monsters to make up your team. And if you don't, it'll be randomly chosen for you, and you probably don't want that because you'll probably get really crappy ones. And so Carl and Donut, they need to go track down like some of the fiercest monsters they can find. And then there's this one, the Bedlam Bride, or Shy Maria, and she's like part demigod and part whatever. She's like this giant spider lady creature thing, and they're gonna try and get her for part of their deck. What happens along the way and all the craziness and chaos that you would expect. Like, there is no downtime in these books. It is just all craziness, action, emotional insanity, and I love it. I'm loving every minute of it. These books, like, yeah, they're 800 pages, but once you get in the pages, it's really hard to put them down. And I'm going to just keep saying it over and over again. Like, if you're looking for a series that's weird and fantasy and kind of like, has that RPG, D&D feel, it's so freaking good. I love it so much. I don't know. I'm just going to keep saying it. It's awesome. If you're thinking about it, do it. All right. So after that, we have a folk horror called The Burial Tide by Neil Sharpson. This book is weird as heck. So you enter the story and you have this woman, Mara Fitch, and she's crawling her way out of her own grave. She doesn't remember how she died, how she got there, what the F happened. Well, she gets out of this grave and she's ravenously hungry. And so she's like covered in mud and she's stumbling her way down the road and she sees like a cabin or a little house with a light on. It's the middle of the night. She breaks into this house and starts eating everything in someone's fridge. And there's a guy upstairs. His name is Declan. And he's like, what the F? What's going on? So he like, I don't know if he grabbed a baseball bat or whatever. He came downstairs and there's this mud covered woman in his fridge. And she like kind of freaks out and grabs a knife. And then eventually they talk and she calms down a bit. And he's like, yeah, but you're dead. So She's like, what? And he's like, can I call you a doctor? I don't really know what's going on. And there's also supposed to be like an outbreak on the island where they are, because this is an island horror. So you have island isolation, which I'm a big fan of island isolation horror and folk horror. This is an island off the coast of Ireland. There's a bunch of weird lore going on, and it seems like all the island people or villagers outside of the clan seem to kind of know what's going on with Mara and why she was buried and why this is happening, but everyone's all hush hush. And there's a bunch of other weird stuff on this island too. There's weird, creepy creatures in the trees. There are roads that are covered in teeth. The main bartender lady, Grania, or whatever her name is, she speaks in riddles, and they have these two brothers who gamble for nothing, and there's just a whole bunch of weird stuff going on. And then you have like the lore of it all, and I kind of guessed what the lore was because I have seen and read about the specific lore that it went into it, but I'm not going to say what that is. If you like folk horror and island horror, would definitely recommend this one. It was really good. And I want to read more by this author too. I read a lot of really good books this month. Okay, after that, we have The Girl with a Thousand Faces by Sun Yudin. This is about this woman who washes up on the shores of Hong Kong. She doesn't remember who she is, where she came from, but she can see ghosts and talk to ghosts. And so she has nothing to her name. And she makes her way to the city of Kowloon, which is the walled city. And it is a city full of ghosts. And she ends up being able to use the fact that she can talk to ghosts and that they actually listen to her favor. And that becomes like her job and what she does. And she helps this like triad that runs the city to kind of control the ghosts so they don't get out of hand and go kill people, whatever it is that they do to cause their ruckusing, okay? But then there ends up being this like water spirit or demon or ghost that starts killing people. And Mercy Chan, who is this woman who washed up on the shore, she's going to have to be the one to stop it. It seems like it may have a connection to her, but she doesn't remember because she has no recollection of her former life before washing up on these shores. It is strange and eerie, and you have all this like backstory and history and lore. It's part like ghost story, it's part historical fiction, it's part so many things, and I really enjoyed it. My one caveat with it is it starts out straight into action and it's like, dang, what just happened? But then it like pulls back the reins and you get into a much slower story, which I still enjoyed, but that was a little bit jarring. So that's my one complaint about it. I still really liked it. Okay, after that, I read A Box Full of Darkness by Simone St. James, and this is the story that follows the Esme siblings. And when they were younger, their little brother Ben, they were playing hide and go seek with him. He was 6 years old, and he went and hid, and he never came back. He disappeared, and they never found him. And they live in this town of Fell, New York. And in Fell, New York, stuff is like super weird. A lot of murders happen there. Bodies turn up in weird freaking places. Mysterious happenings with no explanation. Like there's this church that has like a haunted church beam where two different priests hung themselves like 80 years apart. You also have like supposedly a poltergeist at the local college. So there's a bunch of weird stuff happening. And then the siblings who grew up in this house, they all had different experiences too. Like the oldest sister, Violet, she has seen ghosts her whole life. Then you have Dodie, the middle sister, and she like had this weird stuff where there was always like she didn't know if it was a dream or visions or hallucinations or what, but there was always this like dark, really smelly water that would like come up and try to like go over her head and drown her. And then there was weird stuff that she thought was under her bed. You know, she was a kid growing up, so who knows, right? But then the other brother, Vale, he thought that he was being visited by aliens his whole life because he would wake up, there'd be these weird looming creatures over his bed looking down at him. And so he became a UFO researcher later in life. And so you have all this like weirdness. And then eventually they're all called home to their house where they used to live. And none of them really talked to each other a whole lot over the years. Broke the family apart basically when Ben went missing, the little brother. They go back to find out what happened to Ben because Violet gets a call from the landscaping people. And the guy's like, my men refuse to work on your house anymore. He's like, I went over and I was just going to do it. But me neither. And she's like, why, what? She's like, who did you see? Because she sees ghosts. And he's like, I saw a little boy who's probably like 5 or 6 years old. And he said, come home. And so Violet's like, that message is for me. And so then all the siblings decide they're going to come home and try to find out what the heck happened to Ben all these years. They're also going to try to make contact with Ben if Ben's ghost is there. supposedly. I mean, if it freaked out a landscaping company, obviously, but there might also be this other evil entity lurking there too. So it is a fun, weird thriller. This is the second book I've read by Simone St. James, and I've found that I really do enjoy her books. It was a good story. I like the pacing. I like the weirdness of it. Come on, you know, like if you've been around the channel, you know I like stuff that has like paranormal influenced storylines. So right in my wheelhouse. I didn't think it was amazing, but I thought it was a solid book. Okay, so out of all of those, we obviously know if, okay, we don't obviously know. This is where I like name my favorite books, right? So, well, The Book Witch I thought was absolutely amazing. I love that one so much. One of my favorite reads of the year. But also, I do love Dungeon Crawler Carl, and my other one is The Eye of the Bedlam Bride. I absolutely loved it. I feel like anytime a Dungeon Crawler Carl book is in any of my videos, I'm going to tell you I loved it, because I do. I'm still waiting. Maybe I'll find one I don't like. I currently have, what, 3 more to go? Or is there only 8 books? I don't know. I just read book 6, so I have 7, 8. Maybe there's only 2 more to read currently? Anyways. And then the best horror I read was The Midnight Muse, because those two are fantasy. So we got to tell you the best horror too, right? So what has been some of the best stuff you have read this past month? Let me know. I'm always curious. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.